You're sitting at a red light, and you hear it. A soft tapping under the hood that wasn't there last spring. You tell yourself it's nothing. The salesman swore this engine was built to run 200,000 miles without a worry. But that little tap is the sound of a machine dying from the inside out, slowly, quietly, from something that costs about $1 to stop. Here's what I've learned after years of collecting the things mechanics used to know before the manuals got thin. Most engines don't die of old age. They die of neglect that was sold to you as convenience. And the fix, the real fix, is older than you are, cheaper than a cup of coffee, and it's been quietly written out of the owner's manual sitting in your glove box right now. I'm going to hand you something today that traces back to a small workshop in Chicago in 1923, where a man named Bert Pierce mixed up a formula by hand. By the time we're done, you'll know the $1 habit that keeps an engine clean enough to outlive the car wrapped around it. And you can start tonight in your own driveway with almost nothing in your hands. Let me take you back to the moment I first understood this. I was standing in a cramped repair bay outside Bakersfield, California, maybe 15 years ago, watching an old-timer named Ray crack open a valve cover on a car with only 90,000 miles on it. What I saw inside stopped me cold. The metal wasn't shining and wet with oil the way it should be. It was caked, coated in a brown-black crust that looked like burnt gravy dried onto a stove. Ray tapped it with a screwdriver and a chunk flaked off. He looked at me and said one sentence I've never forgotten. He said, "This engine didn't wear out. Somebody starved it." That word stuck with me, starved. And here's the loop I want you to hold in your mind, because it won't close until the very end. That crust, that killer, is made of the very oil that was supposed to protect the engine. The thing meant to save it is what turned around and choked it. How does that happen? Stay with me, because the answer is the whole game. Now let me show you what that brown crust really is, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you'll never trust a lifetime fluid sticker again. Inside every running engine, oil is doing a brutal job. It's getting whipped, heated past 230 degrees, and blasted with tiny bits of unburned fuel and soot that sneak past the piston rings. Good oil holds all that filth in suspension, carries it to the filter, and keeps the metal clean. But when oil sits too long, it breaks down. It can't hold the filth anymore. So the filth drops out and bakes onto the hottest parts of the engine. Mechanics have a plain word for it: sludge. Sludge is the #1 silent killer of modern engines, and almost nobody talks about it out loud. It plugs the tiny passages that feed oil to the top of the engine. It clogs the little screen on your oil pump pickup, the one part you can't see and can't easily reach. And once that screen is half blocked, your engine is running on a fraction of the oil it needs, even though the dipstick looks full. The gauge lies. The warning light stays dark. And the damage is already done. Here's the part that made my blood run a little cold when I first pieced it together. Back in the 1950s, this problem was so common and so understood that the whole industry built a defense against it. In 1947, the American Petroleum Institute started rating oils by how well they fought deposits. By the early 1950s, they had a whole classification system, and detergent oils became the standard. Detergent oil. That word matters. The oil was designed to actively scrub the engine and hold the crud so it couldn't settle. Our fathers and grandfathers were told plainly, change this oil often, and the engine will run clean for decades. They knew back then that an engine kept clean simply does not die the way a dirty one does. So here's the loop I'm snapping shut, and the bigger one I'm cracking open right behind it. The crust Ray showed me was sludge, and sludge is what starves an engine to death. That's the answer to the first mystery. But now the bigger question. If we've known how to stop this since the 1950s, if the science was settled before most of us were born, then why is it happening more today on newer engines than it did on the simple ones our parents drove? Somebody changed the rules, and I want to show you exactly who and exactly why, because this is where the story stops being about oil and starts being about your wallet. Somewhere in the last 30 years, the advice quietly flipped. If you pull out an owner's manual from the 1980s, you'll usually see an oil change recommended every 3,000 miles. Solid, conservative, the kind of number that keeps sludge from ever getting a foothold. But open a manual printed in the last 10 or 15 years, and you'll see numbers like 7,500 miles, 10,000 miles, some say 15,000 miles between changes. On some cars, they'll tell you the transmission fluid never needs changing at all. Sealed for life, they call it. Lifetime fluid. Now stop and think about that word for a second. Lifetime. Whose lifetime? Because it sure isn't the engine's lifetime, and it sure isn't yours. When I dug into it, the answer turned my stomach a little. That lifetime quietly means the life of the warranty. It means the fluid has to last just long enough to get your car past the years the manufacturer is on the hook for repairs. After that, what happens to your engine is your problem, not theirs. And a car that needs a new engine at 120,000 miles is a car that sends you right back to the showroom floor to buy another one. I'm not telling you every long interval is a lie. Oils really did get better. Filters got better. But here's the sleight of hand nobody points out. Those longer intervals were also a selling point. In the 1990s and 2000s, low maintenance and fewer trips to the shop became a way to advertise a car. Longer oil life looked like a gift to the customer. It looked like the manufacturer was saving you money and hassle. And a lot of folks believed it, because who reads past the headline? But an engine doesn't care about marketing. It cares about clean oil. And when you stretch that oil to 15,000 miles in a car that idles in traffic, makes short, cold trips to the grocery store, and never fully burns off the moisture and fuel that builds up inside, that oil turns to tar long before the odometer says it's time. The manual gives you the interval for perfect highway conditions. Almost nobody drives in perfect highway conditions. So the oil that was supposed to protect your engine sits there breaking down, and one quiet morning it starts baking itself onto the metal, and the countdown to that tapping sound begins. There's a second trap layered right on top of this one, and it's even sneakier. Modern engines run hotter and tighter than the old ones. Automakers chase fuel economy and lower emissions, so they build engines with smaller oil passages, tighter tolerances, and something called direct injection, where fuel gets sprayed straight into the cylinder. It's clever engineering, but it means these engines are far less forgiving of dirty oil than the big, loose, simple V8s of the 1970s. The old engines could take abuse and shrug it off. The new ones can't. They demand cleaner oil than ever before, right at the same time we were all told we could change it half as often. Do you feel the trap closing? Engines that need more care, paired with instructions that tell you to give them less. That gap, that exact gap, is where engines go to die, and it's where a whole lot of money quietly changes hands. So that's the villain out in the open, not one evil man in a room. Just a slow drift of advice, nudged along by people who make more money when your engine wears out on schedule. But here's what they can't take from you. The old defense still works. Clean oil still saves engines, exactly like it did in 1952. The knowledge was never wrong. It was just buried under a stack of glossy brochures. And that brings me to something I want to share with you before we go any further, because what I've just laid out is only the beginning of how deep this rabbit hole goes. This pattern, useful knowledge being quietly crowded out so that someone else profits from your confusion, shows up everywhere, not just under your hood. I've spent years collecting these buried systems and forgotten edges, and I pulled the most important ones together into a series of books: Reset, Deep Leverage, and The Full Stack. Each one is built around the same idea at work in this video, that the simple, cheap, proven way was never wrong. It was just made to feel inconvenient. If you've ever felt like the deck was stacked against you without quite being able to name how those books put the whole picture into words, you can find them linked in the description below, and I think you'll recognize the pattern on the very first page. But let's get back to what you can do tonight. Starting with the part I promised, the part that costs about $1. But before I get to the dollar trick, I need to talk to the person watching this who's already shaking their head. Maybe you're thinking, that's fine for a man with a garage and a set of tools, but I don't know a wrench from a hammer, and I'm not crawling under a car at my age. I hear you. So let me tell you plainly, this next part is for you especially, not for the gearheads, for the person who has never once changed their own oil and never intends to, because the single most powerful thing you can do costs you nothing but 2 minutes and a paper towel and you already own everything you need. Here it is. Once a month, before you start the car in the morning, you pull the dipstick and you look. That's it. You wipe it clean, push it back in, pull it out again, and you read two things: how high the oil is and what color it is. Fresh oil is honey brown and see-through. Oil that's doing its dirty job goes darker, and that's normal. But oil that's gone black as coffee and feels gritty between your fingers, that's oil that has given up. That's oil that's about to start baking itself onto your engine. And oil that's low, an inch below where it should be, means your engine is already burning or leaking it, and driving on it is like running a marathon on an empty stomach. I cannot tell you how many dead engines started with an owner who never once looked at that stick. The car gave them 100 warnings on that dipstick, month after month, and the light on the dash never came on until it was far too late. The dashboard light is not an early warning. By the time it glows, the harm is usually done. The dipstick is the early warning, and it's been sitting right there under your hood the whole time, free, waiting for someone to just look at it. Now, the dollar. Here's the part the quick lube places would rather you didn't know. When your oil is old and your engine has started to build up that varnish and sludge, you don't necessarily need a $1,500 engine flush at a shop. There's an old mechanic's trick, and Ray in Bakersfield was the one who showed it to me. About a quart low on your next oil change. Before you drain it, you pour in a small amount of automatic transmission fluid into your engine oil. Not a lot. Maybe half a cup to a cup in a full crankcase. Then you let the engine idle, gently, for 10 or 15 minutes. You do not drive it hard. You do not floor it. You just let it run warm in the driveway. Why transmission fluid? Because it's loaded with detergents and cleaning agents, even more aggressive than the ones in engine oil. It gets in there and starts loosening the varnish and gum that's built up on the parts. Then you drain it all out, that dirty fluid and the loosened crud along with it, and you put in fresh oil and a fresh filter. Old-timers were doing this back before there was a fancy product on every shelf for it, and a quart of transmission fluid costs a few dollars, which works out to about $1 for the splash you actually use. That's the $1 cleaning that big shops charge you a fortune to do with a machine. I want to be honest with you, because I'm not here to sell you a miracle. If an engine is already badly sludged, if that pickup screen is already choked solid, no cheap trick brings it back from the dead. This isn't about resurrection. It's about prevention and about catching things early, while $1's worth of effort still means something. The whole secret of the old way was never one heroic repair. It was small, cheap, regular care that meant you never needed the heroic repair in the first place. And that brings me to the thing I've been holding back this whole time, the finale. The formula from that Chicago workshop in 1923. The man was Bert Pierce, and the story goes that he was a traveling salesman who kept watching cars break down on the road because the old carburetors and engines gummed up with deposits. Back then, gasoline was dirty and oil was crude, and an engine could clog itself solid in no time. So Pierce mixed up a blend of light oils and solvents that could dissolve those deposits and keep the fuel system and the engine clean. He couldn't fully explain the chemistry to people in a way they'd believe, so when they asked what was in it, he'd just smile. And that's how it got its name, Marvel Mystery Oil. More than 100 years later, that little red-labeled can is still on the shelf, and here's what almost nobody under the age of 70 remembers about how to use it. Our grandfathers didn't wait for a problem. They added a small amount of it to the oil and to the gas tank on a regular schedule as a habit to keep the deposits from ever forming. A few ounces in the crankcase, a splash in the fuel. It kept the varnish soft, kept the rings free, kept the valves from sticking, and kept the whole fuel system clean, back when clean was the difference between a car that lasted and one that didn't. It cost pennies per use. And it was standard, ordinary, grandmother's kitchen common knowledge for 2 generations of American drivers. Then it faded. Not because it stopped working, but because we were slowly taught that a modern car is a sealed box you're not supposed to touch. That maintenance is something you pay a specialist to do, on the specialist schedule, with the specialist's expensive machine. The habit of a man taking care of his own engine, with a $1 splash of something from a red can, that habit was made to feel old-fashioned, even a little foolish. And when a habit feels foolish, people quietly stop passing it down. That's how knowledge dies. Not in a bang, in a shrug. But it didn't fully die, because a handful of old mechanics like Ray kept doing it, kept teaching it to anyone who'd stand still long enough to listen. And now it's in your hands. The engine you drive right now, whatever it is, responds to the same clean oil law that ruled engines in 1923 and 1952 and today. Keep the oil fresh. Look at the dipstick every month. Change the oil closer to the old 3,000 to 5,000 mile mark if you make a lot of short trips, no matter what the manual's long number tells you. Change the transmission fluid every so often, no matter what the lifetime sticker claims, because there is no such thing as lifetime fluid, only fluid that lasts as long as somebody else's promise. And if you want the old edge, keep a red can on the shelf and use it the way your grandfather did, a little and often, before there's ever a problem to fix. Let me pull the whole thread together now, because every loop I opened comes back to one simple truth. That tapping sound at the red light, the brown crust on Ray's valve cover, the engine that wore out at 90,000 miles, the lifetime fluid sticker, they are all the same story told from different angles. An engine does not have a natural short lifespan. An engine has the lifespan you give it. And the difference between one that dies young and one that runs past 200,000 miles isn't luck, and it isn't the badge on the hood. It's whether the oil inside it stayed clean. That's the whole secret. That's what they stopped putting in the front of the manual. I think about Ray every time I pull a dipstick. He's gone now. But that one sentence of his outlived him, and now it's outliving me by traveling to you. This engine didn't wear out. Somebody starved it. You don't ever have to be the one who starved it. You've got the dipstick, you've got the dollar splash of transmission fluid, you've got the red can with the mysterious name and the honest history, and you've got the one piece of knowledge the glossy brochures spent 30 years trying to make you forget. Clean oil is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy, and it's been sitting under your hood the entire time. If you take one thing from me today, let it be this. You were never bad with cars. You were just never handed the simple, quiet knowledge that used to pass from a father to a son over an open hood on a Saturday morning. That knowledge wasn't lost by accident. It was crowded out by people who make more money when your engine dies on schedule. And now you're holding it again, the way it was meant to be held, by an ordinary person taking care of what's theirs. So here's what I want to know from you. When did you last actually pull your dipstick and look at the color of your oil? Was it honey brown, or was it black as coffee? Tell me down in the comments, and tell me where in the country you're driving, because I read them, and I learn as much from you as you do from me. And if you've ever used that red can, the Marvel Mystery Oil, I want to hear how your engine ran, because those stories are exactly the kind of knowledge that deserves to be kept alive. If you're the kind of person who believes the useful things get buried on purpose to keep you paying, then you belong here, because that's what this whole collection is for. This is a place for people quietly taking back the knowledge that was taken from them, one forgotten trick at a time. Follow along and stay with me, because the next one I've got is about the sealed for life transmission I mentioned, and the $4 test you can do in your own driveway that tells you whether that fluid is already cooked long before it drops the transmission on the side of the highway. That one surprised even me, and I don't want you to miss it. Keep the oil clean, keep the knowledge closer, and I'll see you at the next open hood. Stay with me one more minute, because there's more. Right where this video leaves off, I'll walk you through the whole season-long oil change ritual, step by step, for the folks who join me inside the Old Ways Society. In there, you can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. A real person. And you won't be alone. You belong here with us. Just point your phone at the code on your screen. Cancel anytime.